Well, let's talk about something that is your strong suit. And Ed Oliver gets an extension. Like I said, I was on my way to the game. I looked down at my phone, not expecting to see any Bills related news. If anything, I was like, okay, maybe some Bandits news or baseball, or maybe my friend saying, "Where are you? You're running late." I know. And then I was like, wait, whoa, Ed Oliver? And then I look at the contract details and I didn't really process it. Like I was driving and I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm like, is that 16, 17 million a year? And again, I really haven't been able to sit with it and think about it. And that's what we're doing here tonight. But what were your initial reactions to that? Because now that I think about it, he is the 11th highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL once his contract kicks in. And we were thinking right along that maybe he's not even worth that $10.8 million contract on his fifth year this year. So now you're going to increase that by another 7 million. How do we feel about this?
Basically the same as I felt when I saw the news yesterday. Just, eh, like we'll see what happens. Honestly, I don't have any strong opinions one way or the other on this. It was mostly just surprised that this was the time that they extended him. Surprised that he wasn't the player that you would have let play out the year and see whether or not you wanted to keep him. But maybe they just got concerned because they did it that way with Tremaine Edmonds last year, let him play out the fifth year, then he got priced out of Buffalo. And maybe they just wanted to lock up a player they like. I don't know. Obviously, he will need to step up to earn that money, but also, again, just remember average annual value doesn't necessarily equal the cap hit that he's going to have this year. This year, the reason you do an extension like that for a player playing on his fifth year option is to lessen the cap hit this year. And then the real money kicks in the next couple years. And we all know that Brandon Beane usually inserts an out somewhere in these extensions. So more likely than not, Ed Oliver, if he doesn't pan out, he won't be here for 4 years. He won't be stuck here for 4 years.
Well, I want to pull up a comment that I just saw from James. He says, great deal for Ed, not so much for the organization. And I would agree. And I think a lot of people share those same sentiments because Ed Oliver was talking all offseason about show me the money. Show me the money. He kept posting it on his Instagram story. I think it was Jeffrey Simmons. He got that new contract. And then right after that, Ed Oliver was licking his chops. And I remember we sat on this show and other people, Twitter spaces, different articles, what have you. But a lot of us were saying that Ed Oliver is not worth that kind of money. And if he wants to really see the money, then it can be elsewhere because the Bills just didn't have the cap space. So I'm really surprised that they gave him as much as they did. But I'm wondering if they did it to create more cap space for this year. Like maybe they worked in some contract details where they say, okay, I know it's an average annual value of 17 million, but we had the third fewest amount of cap space available prior to this deal. So that just freed up, let's just say 3 or 4 million. And I know you're probably thinking, oh, does that mean we can get DeAndre Hopkins? I don't know, maybe. Dalvin Cook, who knows? But I think that there was a reason why they did this. And I agree. Going back to the Tremaine Edmonds aspect, they want to draft, develop, and re-sign, and they did not do that with Edmonds. But again, it's just a head scratcher. I keep coming back to that 17 million average annual value, and it's like, okay, you didn't want to give that to Edmonds, but you just turned around and gave it to Oliver, who probably wasn't worth it just because he's been so inconsistent.
Yeah, and that's a fair criticism. Like I said, I mean, I understand why a lot of people are so negative about the deal. Again, I'm not going to go as far as saying that Bean is a bonehead and that he should be fired for making that deal. I'm just going to say, well, he made the deal. Ed Oliver is now getting his money. Now he just needs to go show he deserved it. Just go out on the field. It'll help, though, that now he'll have a consistent one tech presence opposite him on the field. Because last year it was Daquan Jones and Daquan Jones. That was really the only one tech they had. This year you got Poona Ford coming in, so you have a second quality one tech opposite him who can take up the double teams. So Ed Oliver doesn't have to be put in those unfavorable positions. And I'm going to say what? Oh, yeah. And the other thing, too, is another reason why you usually do these extensions sooner rather than later, and this falls in line with Brandon Beane's MO, is getting ahead of the market. Quinnen Williams is still looking for his big boy deal. He'll get that soon enough. Chris Jones, his current deal is going to expire soon. He's going to get a big contract. And while Ed Oliver is not in the same class, nowhere close, that market, if they had waited for those two deals, it still would have impacted the amount of money that Ed Oliver would have gotten. And maybe it would have made it worse for the Bills. And you know how time and time again, we see the extensions, then a couple months later, you see the other couple extensions from other teams, and then we look at it and say, oh, that's not bad. Could think of it the same way for here, except obviously, again, the production issues in terms of Ed Oliver may make it still seem like a bad deal for now.
And I agree. I think this can turn out to be a really good deal in the end. But the big question is, can he do it consistently? Because I've been seeing people talk about, whether it's on Twitter or even in our chat right now, that he's been battling injuries. And like you said, he hasn't had that consistent one tech. But if you're drafted number 9 overall and you're given $68 million, I don't care if you have different factors. You better be able to show up and show out no matter what adversity you're dealing with. Because if you're going to have that status, you have to make plays. You can't make excuses and say, well, I didn't have a one tech, so, my stats aren't as good this year. Well, if you're drafted number 9 overall, you better wreak havoc in some capacity. And a lot of these games, he seems to show up on Thanksgiving or the bigger games. And that's another thing that we've been saying. Like, if he can play like he does on Thanksgiving or like he does against Dallas every single week, then that would definitely warrant top dollar money. But the fact that he just goes silent and you're sometimes wondering if he's even on the field dressed on a Sunday, I think that's what's leaving, I don't want to say a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouth, but again, I think the best word is just you're very surprised with this deal.
Yeah, exactly. People are just surprised because it was Ed Oliver getting the deal. If it was Daquan Jones who got an extension, I think people would have been applauding it because he's been a very good defensive tackle and he certainly earned one. And I'm sure he'll get one sooner rather than later.